Holy smokes, do I have an amazing episode for you guys today you're not going to want to miss. I said holy smokes, so you know it's amazing, right? So I have a special guest on the podcast today, Meagan Williamson, who is a Pinterest expert. That's right. A Pinterest expert is going to be on the show today. I know you guys, a lot of you guys want to use Pinterest or use it already to grow your Etsy and handmade businesses. Well, this is the real deal. She knows what she's talking about. I wanted to bring her on. I've been meaning to bring her on for a while now to dive in to Pinterest and give you guys tons of tips. You'll learn about her background, how she got started, how she became a Pinterest expert, common mistakes that Pinterest users make, tips to drive traffic from Pinterest to your Etsy store, how to best practices on how to set up your pins, how to test pins, photography tips with your pins, how to optimize your pins, tons and tons more than that. I can't even keep track of everything that we talked about in this amazing interview. But without further ado, I'm going to dive in and you're going to learn a ton on Pinterest to help you benefit and grow your Etsy shops. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Handmade and Beyond podcast. I'm your host, LL, leader of the handmadeandbeyond.com website and community. I'm a self-employed entrepreneur, an Etsy expert, and business coach who's figured out how to make my entire living with my handmade business. Each week, I'll dive into strategies and success tips to help you with your handmade business, with Etsy, and everything in between. Let's dive in.
Hello.
Hi, Megan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Hanging in there. How's your 2020 going so far?
Well, I've been very privileged and very busy, but yeah, I was just talking to a friend who works online and we're saying that we haven't let off the gas since March. And so it's starting to take its entrepreneurial toll, right? Like How long can you keep your foot on the gas without stopping for gas?
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, we're fortunate enough, whether you have an online membership,
exactly, right?
Courses, or whether you do, you're an online seller. I mean, it's more powerful now than ever. So,
right. Well, that's what I say. There's never been a better time to already be positioned for growth in terms of an online business.
But thanks for coming on. It's nice to finally meet you.
Yeah, you as well.
So I've been looking at a lot of your stuff online.
Great.
So yeah, mainly, I think I've been wanting to have someone like yourself on the podcast for a long time because Pinterest is a big part of my audience and growing their Etsy business. I help other Etsy sellers grow their businesses and, hopefully get to the point of being able to do it full time. A lot of them are starting off as like a side hustle, trying to figure things out, trying to get their feet wet. So my goal, with Handmade and Beyond is to really fast forward that as much as possible because I started Etsy, I think it was almost 8 years ago now. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I worked as a director full time. I did it on the side for a couple of years before I was able to really build it up and navigate and really figure out kind of what worked and what didn't work and do more of what worked. And then I was fortunate enough, about 3 years ago, to step away from corporate, do my own thing full time, selling Etsy full time, and start Handmade and Beyond and help other Etsy sellers hopefully do the same, grow their Etsy and handmade business. But with that being said, I think Pinterest is a big part of that marketing strategy and, social media strategy as well to grow their businesses. So, I guess if you want to just tell my audience a little bit about, yourself and your business, and so they get a feel of where you're coming from.
Yeah, sure. My background was actually as a blogger. So 10 years ago, I started blogging. I was living in Europe. Nobody would hire me. I had a lot of time on my hands and I spent a lot of time actually decorating looking for inspiration for how to decorate my home on a budget, because again, I hadn't worked in a few months. And at that time, blogging was becoming more and more accessible. And I decided to start a WordPress blog.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I was just starting out, but I learned how to use, I was an early adopter of Pinterest. Facebook was emerging. And it was funny because the way that you learned at that time is you would publish a piece of content and then use social media for distributing your message and what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, brands that I was working with as a creator started asking me, hey, we noticed that you're using Pinterest. You obviously have a very big presence there. I think at that time in the early days, I had like 75,000 followers. And now I've grown out to over 123,000 followers on Pinterest. Is that people were asking me, hey, we know you're using it. Could you help us as business owners use it? Had total imposter syndrome. And, my background is in school psychology. So we are taught, like, you never say that you know how to do something until you really do your due diligence and learn how to do it. The foundation is always education. So I spent some time learning everything I could, living and breathing Pinterest as a side hustle. And started a consultancy business, helping other business owners, bloggers, larger businesses, actually, people that were brands that actually asked me to do sponsored work, started inquiring about consultancy. And it's just totally transformed from there. So I left my job working as a full-time school psychologist here in Toronto 4 years ago, December.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, I was actually pregnant, so I was getting ready to take maternity leave. I think I was always meant to be my own boss, but didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody who likes to stay busy. I love figuring out how things work. I was always I always adopted technology and computer related things very early. And since that time, I now help small to medium-sized businesses learn how to leverage Pinterest to grow their traffic and ultimately grow their sales and impact. Because I think what we see in the social media marketing world is it's really lovely to be interested in using Facebook communities, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, but we lack this next step. How do we actually make sales from all those people finding us? And actually what's really cool about Etsy is Etsy and Pinterest were always like peanut butter and jam, right? Like they always went together, and we've seen lots of changes, but as things have evolved on Etsy and things have rapidly changed on Pinterest, there's huge opportunities for a lot of small business owners who are getting started or even, doing well. They just don't know what they should be doing to get more traffic from Pinterest. And so I help people with that journey.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. It's just like any social media platform. It's just, you got to kind of figure it out. And I think a lot of people just get overwhelmed because there's so many, and they sit back and they're like, which one's the best one? Then they end up not doing any of them.
Yes.
So I try to teach people, I'm like, whatever you feel the most comfortable with, start with one, get in the habit of using it consistently, and then you can refine that later, whether that's Pinterest, whether it's Facebook, whether that's Instagram.
And I think the path of least resistance, right? Like whichever one you feel is easiest. I think that's the funny thing is that there's like a thing where Pinterest is really intuitive for me. And I think that's why it always, for lack of a better way of describing it, clicked. Like I always just used it the way it wanted to be used. And then other people would come to me and they're like, I don't get it. Like I throw up a product or I throw up a blog post and nobody's reading it because they were trying, they're not using it the way it wanted to be used. And that was just something where I was always drawn to it. Like being someone who asked to join, like I joined when it was in beta. And so I got a personal invite from Ben and I just started using it because I liked it, not because I was trying to be strategic.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I use it pretty much every day. It's funny. I use it usually obviously for business, but I am not even close to an expert on Pinterest at all. Sure. But usually for recipes or building furniture, like stuff like that.
Right.
It's so awesome.
Well, and actually, so that's it's an interesting thing that I get asked a lot about, like, is my audience on Pinterest? Are the people who are going to buy my products actually there? And we all know that the vast majority of people who use Pinterest are women,
Hmm.
but there are growing segments. So dads, men are turning. So my husband has recently got into woodworking, and he is turning to Pinterest for projects on beginning woodworking, projects and tips. He's been looking up DIY tutorials, and he's loving it because it's so visual. So he can get a sense, like,
Hmm.
is this something that I want? And what I've noticed is we've seen an explosion of younger people using Pinterest. So what we would, call like the TikTok generation, people who
Yeah.
are 15 to 25. So there's all these emerging. We know that the usage of Pinterest has increased over, well, the statistic that we heard that's the most recent is, from March 2019 to March 2020, increased by 60%. So
Oh,
it's a
wow.
very healthy platform. It's growing. There are new people turning to it, especially during a more difficult time in history where people are having to get unique. How can I film a podcast episode when my children are playing a few rooms over?
Yeah.
How can I make more out of the ingredients I have in my pantry? How can I give unique gifts this Christmas without going to local shops because we're not allowed to? So we know that there's going to be more people who are ordering gifts online, are looking for unique ways to give, special, customized or personalized, like to make connections during
Hmm.
a time where it's more difficult. And so that's where it's a really exciting time for Pinterest, because it does those things of connecting customers with those products.
Yeah. And the endless scroll is pretty dangerous too.
Especially once it learns what you like. I saw a funny quote about, like, Pinterest is the perfect algorithm because it knows, like, if you're into a certain thing, it will show you more. And then that rabbit hole is like, next thing you know, you spent 2 hours looking at tiny cabins in the woods. And
Exactly. It's dangerous for sure.
yeah.
But so, I would say a lot of my audience has probably used Pinterest, but I would say probably a lot of them don't use it for business, or they're just starting to use it for business. So I know the common mistakes, that I've made, and I'm sure plenty of people make, is they
Mhm.
just, and it's integrated with Etsy. So a lot of times you just go in there and you just share stuff. You just
Yeah.
share it right to your page, and then that's pretty much it. So what would you say are, and I know that's wrong, I know enough to know that's probably wrong.
Yes.
What would you say are like some of the common maybe mistakes or things to really avoid for
Yeah.
like the beginners out there?
So I would say that one, you talked earlier about being consistent. So
Hmm.
once you decide that you're going to use the platform, you have to be consistent. And the reality is that we know social, like, Pinterest is a long game. It's much like actually Etsy SEO or website SEO if people
Hmm.
also sell from their websites. And what I find is we know that that's sort of a long-term investment. Like, the system doesn't know overnight. It has to have time to do something called indexing, which is like labeling what your product is about,
Okay.
what you're selling. And so Pinterest, they'll never tell us how long it takes to index content, but no, it's not going to be overnight. It could be weeks. If you sell seasonal content, it's important to know that oftentimes, and I would I'm sure this will resonate with a lot of people who are already using Pinterest, is that sometimes you're adding seasonal content now for it to go viral next year, because it takes Pinterest that long. Like, what is this product about? Who do we connect? Like, it tests it for you. So if
Hmm.
you label something like customized holiday baby gifts, right? Like a baby onesie that has their name on it, or baby's first Christmas. The reality is that Pinterest, people are in discovery mode. So they're looking to discover ideas for things that they're going to act upon in probably 2 to 3 months' time. So people were searching for gifts in September to buy them in November, early December. And I think most of us have been trained: post something to Instagram, make a sale; go live on
Hmm.
Facebook, make a sale. Whereas Pinterest is sow the seeds today for sales in 6 months, 3 months time. And that's where that
Gotcha.
avalanche of sales comes from, and where it builds momentum, right? It's like on top, on top, on top. So one big mistake I see is that a lot of Etsy shop sellers, they just take what they've done for Etsy. Like, okay, I did Etsy keyword research or SEO research,
Mm-hmm.
and I made images that are sized well for the platform. I'm just gonna save it to Pinterest. And really, that's it. It's not getting the full speed out of what you could be getting if you actually optimized your content for the platform. So the same way that when you post something to Instagram, and you would probably make sure that it's either an aspect ratio of 1:1 for your feed or 4:5. Those are the recommended sizing. And you probably, if you take 10 pictures of a product, you probably have one that you're like, oh, that's beautiful. That's what I'm going to post to Instagram. Much like that, you have to get into the headspace of how you can optimize your assets and your copy to actually be suited for the platform. And that's a huge opportunity that I see so many Etsy shop sellers, they just grab whatever they've written for Etsy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the copy that they're using. They're also not using optimized assets. So Pinterest has, just like every platform, has its favorite sizing, which is an aspect ratio of 2:3. Okay, so that's generally 1,000 pixels by 1,500 pixels in Canva, if your audience uses Canva, which a lot of people do.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what I recommend is that instead of just pushing what you've done for your Etsy listing over to Pinterest, take the time and batch it, do it in one sitting, make images for your assets, just resize them to the platform preferred sizing. And then what you do is you manually upload those in Pinterest, and then, and you connect it to your product listing. And then that way you're actually probably going to be seen by 2 to 3 times more people. So they know that optimized assets are shown 2 to 3 times more has visibility wise.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, because I know they like the longer pictures. I mean, that makes sense with the scrolling and
video, if possible. If you have any video,
Gotcha.
video is emerging on the platform. If you're in the US, story pins, although not everybody has that capability yet. So story pins and video pins are emerging formats on the platform. And often when you're an early adopter of a new format, Pinterest, it could potentially accelerate your growth. So I encourage anyone who already has those features on their account to be using them. Get creative. I know people say, well, I'm in a product-based business. How do I make a video? You can get creative, right? Like you could do a recording, you could do a carousel of images that's turned into a video clip. Heck, you can even do like a static image that just has an animation on it that you can, a sticker in Canva, you can add stickers and it adds animation to images. Just basically get creative. You can do music. I've seen people take music and put it with like scrolling images. But people love movement, right? As humans, we are drawn to movement and video. So if you have the capacity to layer video into your Pinterest strategy, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, that's a good tip. And that's something that we're dealing with Etsy. They just rolled out video for
Oh, did
listing.
they?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
So we've been
interesting.
talking a lot about, what you can do for, like you were just saying, with still images and getting creative and making a move, even though they're a still image.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're not trying to make too much extra work for yourself. It's funny. I think these things, we're going to continue to see video take, on every platform, right? Like we are just lazier than ever. We're tired. We just want to we want to know what we're watching. We want to see video. And so I think that people who fail to sort of adopt these new ways of sharing what we do and what our products are going to see that it's going to be more and more difficult to grow on platforms, whether it be Etsy, Pinterest, Instagram.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like anything. You can't be afraid to try new things, and the more mud you throw at the wall, the more it's gonna stick. So if you don't do anything, your wall is gonna be clean, and that's no fun. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, and it's something I've heard before, but is there a lot of truth behind adding specific text to images for Pinterest? Like, does that help
like
you?
a Pinterest graphic? You mean like with text overlay?
Yeah. Because I've heard that it's possible that the algorithm does pick up text on images rather than just
absolutely it does. So
Okay.
Pinterest has extremely advanced image technology. So it scans every single image. And so this is Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it knows. So it knows if you have pinned an image previously. That's how it determines if it's a duplicate pin or has previously existed on the platform. And so what's actually quite interesting, and this is how I, in my own communities, how I explain Pinterest images, is I know there's certain people, especially wedding industry, or there's industries where the images really do show exactly what it is. But the reality is that on Pinterest, people, it's a visual search engine, right? So people
Hmm.
are using their eyes to search. If they are at all confused, they will keep scrolling. So that text overlay allows them to know very quickly what it is they're looking at and who it's for. So that's where understanding your messaging, if you make baby products, hey, you're going to make sure that you are mentioning that these are baby products and who are you talking to? Grandmas, new parents, like you really, that text is the ability, and all your images don't have to be text. I really do recommend using a variety of images. I call like plain static, video, story, Pinterest graphics, and test out what works best for your product. But a lot of us, actually was just doing a bit of a consult for somebody who sells on Etsy, and they sell something related to Elf on a Shelf. And when I looked at the images they were using, I couldn't tell what I was looking at. And I said, like, it looks like a holiday scene. I see a child, but I can't figure out what your product is about. To have clear text overlay. Elf
Hmm.
in a Shelf, like gift boxes for children, young children. And then right away, I'm like, oh, I need an Elf in a Shelf gift. I want something special for the holidays for my son. But like when I looked at those pictures, I said, this looks like a beautiful, beautiful gift, but I have no idea what I'm looking at. So I think that we have to remember, in like human people generally who use social media, regular people see thousands of messages a day. So if they are confused, subconsciously, our brains will just keep moving, right? Like we
Hmm.
have to block stuff out so that we can function. The same way that when you're driving on a highway, which billboards grab your attention, right? Like which ones do you pause
Hmm.
on? And it might be the image that's featured. It might be the call out, the CTA that we see on that billboard. Pinterest is exactly the same. You have an opportunity to grab them with beautiful imagery. Your text overlay is going to clarify what your product is about. And so I really recommend that people use Pinterest images complemented with plain images, because you are going to help clarify who your product is for and what it is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's something that I think people struggle with across the board, is just the photography and their images. And you really got to
Mhm.
find your place. Like if I go back and look at some of the pictures I used to use and try to sell
Yeah.
stuff,
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
it's like laughable. I like, these are terrible. No wonder I didn't get sales. But it's one of those
Mhm.
things you learn, you learn what works, the lighting, and
Well, and we're constantly improving, right? Like as a
mhm,
content creator and
absolutely.
blogger, it was the same thing. It was like we're being demanded as small business owners now to have, like gone are the days of the like really bad dark photos where like,
Hmm.
we all have to become mini experts in photography, in video, in Canva, in social media marketing. Like we're a jack of all trades now, right?
Hmm.
But what's cool is it's never been a better time to learn all those things online, right? Like
Yeah.
that's why, like, the world is so accessible for business owners now.
Yeah, it really is. And any phone now can take great photos too. It's
Right?
not, you don't have
Yeah.
to spend all this money on, a nice camera and all that stuff. So it's more, I would say, about lighting. And then
Hmm.
like you were saying with scrolling and catching people's eye, I think a lot of people, and I made this mistake too, is they spend so much time on the background or the setup, and then it starts to take away from the image. And like you
Yes.
said, causes confusion, and people forget that they're not going to be looking at an image that's blown up. That's the only image. They're going to be looking at
Yeah.
little images scrolling by really fast.
Yeah.
And it's easy for something to get lost if you have
Very much so.
it may look good, it may look really nice, but then compared to the other small images, it gets
Mhm.
muted and people keep scrolling, and that's what kind of stinks. So you got to kind of find
Yeah.
out what
Well,
works.
and I think that's where you have to wear a critical, like have a critical hat of your own products and what they look like. Because what we find is like you might be drawn to something, but it doesn't mean it's going to stand out to your customers. So some
Hmm.
people who are like, well, this is my branding and I'm not going off of my branding. It's like, okay, well, fine. But do you want to make sales, or do you want to be remembered as somebody had cute branding? Like ultimately, if you are a business owner, it's about having a business that you love, but it's also about making money to drive your life, to to help pay your mortgage, to fulfill other dreams you have. So it is also about profit and revenue.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you mentioned this before. I wanted to kind of circle back with the duplicate pins. Is that a bad thing to continue to pin something,
Yeah.
or would you rather just like change it up, like you were saying before, with testing different uh,
Sure.
stuff?
So, it's a tricky thing. So this year, Pinterest has gone through a very, very big algorithm change. And I think back in the day, what used to happen is people would take one pin and do something called looping, or you would just repin like a top performing product that people loved. You would just pin it over and over and over again.
Yeah,
And
that's me. I
yeah,
did that.
right. And that was a common practice. So here's the thing. You always have to think about how a regular Pinterest user would view your account if they came. So what would it look like if I went to your account today? And if I see 10 of the same image back to back to back to back, I am not following you. I'm not going to engage with your content because I'm like, ew, like what the,
It looks
it's like,
spammy. Yeah.
it does. And so Pinterest has really moved towards saying to people, listen, people are going to follow you and engage with your content and click to your website if you provide a positive user experience. And how you do that is by engaging in sharing pins that are helpful to them, optimizing your content without being spammy. So Pinterest actually even now defines repetitive pinning as spammy behavior, and you can end up in Pinterest jail. But they know that as a business owner, and I actually have an interview with somebody from Pinterest who says this, we know that as business owners, you want to pin a product, a blog post about your products, whatever, more than once. And it's probably because you might have group boards you belong to. You might have, if you're putting out a Christmas product, you might have 3 boards that it could go to. So they say you can loop an identical pin. The first time that it gets pinned is the most important. That helps Pinterest to understand and index it correctly. And then after that point, it already knows. So once that fresh first time, that is the best. And then every time after that, it will be considered a repin, or it's already existed. So it's no longer fresh.
Gotcha.
Now they know that as business users, we all want to loop or repin something, but they want us to do it in a tasteful way. And they say you will have the best growth when you regularly engage with focusing on fresh content. But the reality is you're not pushing out new products every day, are you? No, probably not. Not most, or even if you're, if you have a blog, you're not blogging every day. So the reality is that they encourage you to think about what your account would look like if somebody just came upon it. So make sure that the second time you pin it, there's distance between it, that you've pinned other content so that you're seeing this beautiful mosaic instead of seeing like, one pin with a bunch of red put to 10 boards, then another one, and then loop it and loop it and loop it. So just make sure that you're tastefully putting, I would recommend at least 7 to 10 days between identical pins. Now there's lots of gossip online. It is just that. It is gossip that people are saying, oh, with this change, you have to do all fresh content. That is phooey, complete phooey. All the clients I represent, none of us had a drop in numbers. We repin our clients' content on a regular basis, but we do it in a tasteful way that results in a positive experience. So we haven't seen a drop in numbers. People are saying like, oh, Pinterest hates you if you're not pinning fresh content. It's not sustainable to do 10 fresh pieces of content a day. Like that's impossible.
Yeah.
So what I do encourage people to do is Pinterest often uses the term repurpose with purpose. So be intentional, vary your imagery, try some different keywords, and make sure that you're not pinning an identical pin back to back. Put space between it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it is funny because all these platforms, they change their algorithm all the time.
Yes,
sometimes daily. So everyone always gets freaked out when Etsy changes their algorithm and stuff like that. Well, but I think it's like you said, don't get caught up in that. Just
no, this is it.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a mindset where there are some people who are drawn that instead of actually thinking, okay, there's been a shift, I'm going to go make some fresh pins for my products in Canva today, they would rather spend 3 hours engaging in negative complaining and griping and coming up with conspiracy theories about
Amen.
Pinterest. And I say to them, stop, you are wasting your energy. Go focus on your own stuff. What
Mhm.
can you control? You can go make some new video pins. You could work on maybe shooting some new photos of your products. We don't control Etsy. We don't control Instagram. We don't control Pinterest, but we do control how we approach change. And those that struggle to adapt, you're going to be left behind. You
Yeah.
are. So, just put your energy to things that you can. And those are the people that rise to the top, right? They keep their head down. Okay, Pinterest has changed. And every time it changes, this is what I say to people, no matter what the platform, when it changes, know that they have made a change, not for business owners, but for the end user. And that's your customer. And you should care that they're having a better experience when they use Pinterest,
Mhm.
because Pinterest is making decisions for regular people who buy your products, not for you and me, right?
Yeah.
So just let it go.
Yeah, wait, and they want it to do well. They're not going to make a change that
No,
kills
they're
the
not silly.
platform. That's what's so funny. People get all bent out of shape, and it's like they want people to be successful so they can continue using it. So
It's
they,
literally their livelihood is dependent on it,
yeah.
right?
So yeah, it's so funny you say that, because I always am like constantly saying that. With the people in my community, and
Yeah.
focus on, like, they don't they're scared to do something, or they're upset about something, so then they don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're worried, they're diving in because their views are going
Dropping.
downhill,
Yeah.
they're dropping, so they just look at their views every day, or they're looking at
Oh,
competition every day. And I'm like,
yeah.
that all well and good, but that's not going to get you anywhere. You
Oh, it
have to
doesn't change
focus on
anything.
actions, whether they're right or the wrong, whether you don't know. Doing something is better than doing nothing,
Well, and
and
you
that's
know
how you
what?
learn.
When you're busy going like this to your
Hmm.
competitor, or when you're busy like looking at the car accident, like there's people who are safely proceeding and getting to their destination before you because they're focused on moving forward in a safe way. It's like
Yeah.
a funny thing, right there. And it's very hard, I think, that sometimes like people are naturally more anxious, and I try to,
Mhm.
I used to work in psychology, I get it, but it's like really focusing on, okay, let's look at reality. What can we control? We can't control those changes. Let's focus on what we can do. And like things like monthly views is something people are obsessed with.
Mhm.
And it's such a disappointing thing, because it doesn't matter how much I yell from the top of the rooftops with my, my megaphone. Monthly views are a vanity metric.
Mhm.
Are they being calculated differently? Probably. Does it matter? No. Has your traffic changed? Yes, no, like that is going to determine what we do. How are you not selling as much? Like, look at the things that actually matter and where you make your money. You don't make money from monthly views. You don't
Mhm.
make money from how many people watched your live. You make money from the people that were driven to take action and actually go to your shop and purchase. And so those are the things that I ask people to look at, but they're just like, they can't stop looking.
Yeah, it's hard, and I've been down that path, especially I think when you're starting out, you're starting a business,
Mm.
especially like Etsy. Like, it's hard to not to get disappointed or frustrated when you're looking at your competition, or then you're like, oh, it's so saturated, and it's like, I sell
Mm.
clothing and T-shirts, and I do really well, and that's probably the most saturated market on there, besides like jewelry.
Yeah.
And it's not about,
Yeah.
I love seeing people blowing me out of the water, because I'm like,
Yeah.
that means I can do it too.
Yeah.
It gives me the motivation to get there too, because they're doing it.
Well, it's like
And
looking at athletes, right?
mhm,
Like we look at athletes and we're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so amazing." Instead
yeah,
of just like, they give us a reason to aspire, and that's just the same with the online world, is
exactly.
that, look at those people as inspiration. And I love, actually, I'm obsessed with product positioning and, understanding who your customers are and what makes you unique. Yes, there's other people who make t-shirts. Yes, there's other people who make clothing, but what is your unique story? Why is your product different? And then like, how do you amplify that? Right.
Hmm.
And I think that some people are afraid to do that.
Yeah.
Afraid to kind of say, yeah, you know what I'm doing is a good thing. Like, I know that there's other people who talk about Pinterest online, but I am who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like in terms of how I teach, I like to think that I'm pretty no fluff. I don't hold back. If people ask me questions, I will tell them what I think. But I'm also, like, I want people to be successful, but I know I can't be for everybody. Right. But so then go to one of my competitors who teaches in a different way. And we all bring something, a different flavor, right? Like people always joke, like usually my dog is actually walking around, people hear my dog, sometimes I cuss, like there's these different things, and it's just who I am, right?
Exactly. You gotta be true to yourself and your audience, and there's plenty out there, we can't have the limiting beliefs for sure.
Oh
but
gosh. And we both know there is a lot of money. There's only more money that's going to be online spent. Like I don't know if you've seen this, but they came out with a recent, like they did a survey, and last year it was something like 30% of holiday shoppers purchased their gifts online. And this year it's gone from 30% to 2/3 are doing all of their like
I can believe it. Yeah, I've been preaching that. I'm like, it's gonna be crazy.
It's going to be
nuts.
Yeah. It is. And like, I think that people aren't like, even think about people. So anyone listening, think about people in your life, right? Like I know my mother used to not shop online. She's old school Irish. She loved going in. She loves touching things.
Yeah.
She didn't like this idea of things shipping to her house using her credit card online. My mom does not shop in regular stores anymore. She has converted to shopping exclusively online. So even people who were resistant to shopping online are now doing the majority of their shopping online. And that, like, you could not ask for a better opportunity to completely kill your financial goals this year.
Yeah. And that's, I have a lot of people that used to do in-person sales, whether it's like, markets or, boutiques, and that, I think that stuff will come back, but it's just so much easier. Like if you've ever done, a market, you got to make sure you have the inventory, and you don't know if it's,
you don't sleep for weeks, right? Like
you don't know what kind of traffic is going to come. Whereas like online, you're selling 24/7, man.
Yeah.
You just got to work on
you wake up to sales.
Yeah. So it's a good thing. I think it'll just make people's lives a little bit easier, and you just got to figure out
and just to like actually not make it about the money, think about how many people can discover and find you because you now sell online. So maybe if you only sold at markets, like Christmas markets, or you only sold at a local farmer's market, you were only tapping into the people who lived in your geographical area or people visiting your area. And now think, if you opened up to all of the US, all of North America, Canada and the US, or even Europe, think about how many more people could discover your product and find that special thing for a loved one, right? Like we're all trying to find ways to find unique gifts. I had somebody participate in one of my free challenges, and she said, Meagan, I'm an Etsy shop seller. I make custom one-off gifts for people I take books, like say if you had a meaningful book and someone wanted to gift it to you, and they make it into it's like a piece of art. She said, like, how would I do that with Pinterest? And I thought, oh my God, I know so many people. I have one of my best friends is a poet. My mom has a book that meant a lot to her as a child. Like there's all these different people that I know even personally who they're really hard to buy gifts for. So I instantly think, well, where could I go to get a really unique gift that would be meaningful without having to, go in person? And right away, I'm like, I would go to Etsy, right? Like I'm looking for homemade, I'm looking for unique, handmade. And that's where people go in droves for those things. And it's just about helping them find you.
Yeah. And it opens up more doors too. And I did an episode not too far back with a member of my community where she sells these amazing dog dresses. They're so like intricate. And I like everything dogs. I have 2 Pekingese. They're taking a nap right now. They're usually roaming around.
Yeah, your coworkers are.
They're my
slacking.
coworkers. I talk to them like, I'm going on break, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Clocking out. Meet you at the water cooler.
that is one weird thing now. Like I don't see, I used to every once escape to the coffee shops and stuff. I don't
Yeah,
really do that
I
anymore.
know. Me
So
neither.
I'm like by myself most of the day, and my
Yeah.
girlfriend will come home later at night and I'm like, oh, another human. But
Yeah, I don't even remember how to talk. Yeah,
yeah.
well, that's what the
But
dogs
anyways,
are there for.
she sells these dog, not costumes, but dresses. And
Yeah.
she did a lot of boutiques, a lot of in-person sales. She moved to Etsy and now she got picked up, people pick up her stuff for shows. They use them for parades.
Yeah,
She got picked up
of
by
course.
the New York dog show, which is like a
Oh
huge.
yeah,
So
that's
she's just been killing it. And I'm like, that never would have happened if you didn't put your stuff out there on Etsy for people to
exactly.
see. So you just never know. And, a couple of years back, I had a shirt picked up by BuzzFeed, and
Yeah,
that was awesome. And I just,
that sort of
I started getting
opportunity.
sales and I'm like,
Yeah,
what's happening? What is going on?
yeah.
I'm not like life-changing
But
sales,
but
but it
I
was,
have those stories too. So I have
yeah.
them. So like I know a few Etsy shop sellers who actually were using Pinterest, got discovered by like Martha Stewart, House and Home, or Better Homes and Gardens, because they were doing like like small shop roundup, and then their product gets featured in a national magazine because one of their researchers was on Pinterest looking for unique party supplies and found them and was like, these are beautiful. Like you couldn't ask. That's free publicity, right? Like that's so amazing. But using platforms and allowing people to find you and yeah, it's such an opportunity. It's incredible.
Yeah. And the common theme is just doing something, just
Yeah.
taking action. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can always
No.
fix it up, get better later. But if you never
Yeah.
do it, you're never going to go through those steps. So that's awesome. So what are like to kind of wrap this up a little bit, what are some maybe additional, we talked about a lot, but additional maybe tips to drive traffic or just best practices that people should look out for, when starting or growing their
Mhm.
Pinterest following?
So I mentioned it earlier, but optimizing your assets for the platform, doing keyword research out of the Etsy
Oh,
keywords.
that's a good one. But
Yeah,
doesn't Pinterest have its own
yeah. So just make sure you
analytics?
check it. Yeah, it does. And it has, you can use Pinterest trends. You could use guided search if it's still available for your industry. But look up what keywords and keyword phrases people are using on Pinterest for your product and related areas. Because what I find is people often use the research they've done on Etsy. I get it. It's a shortcut. It's like, oh, I already did that. But personally, I always do research for my website by doing SEO research for Google, and then I do Pinterest keyword search, and then I combine them so that I'm
That makes
satisfying
sense.
both. And as an Etsy shop seller, I think you can do the same. Just do that little bit of extra research. And if you sell products that are very niche, you're going to do that research once or twice, update it once every 3 months, but you can always be grabbing from that bank of keywords when you put your products onto Pinterest. I would say really think about, testing out different assets and seeing what works for you. Of course, we know there's a framework or set of rules that work for most people, but the reality is you might have somebody in your audience where like video does phenomenal for them.
Mhm.
And then other people try it and it doesn't get great results. But like I say, always try things out, see how it works for you. Be open to the fact that Pinterest really wants fresh content. There is a total move towards, they don't want one image just being shared over and over again. So if you have extra assets, maybe you could actually just create some pins that have a different colored background, change up the text overlay, and it's considered fresh. So think about that, right?
Mhm.
I recommend trying to automate at least 80% of your Pinterest marketing, because I think it just allows you then to focus on creating new products. Use an approved scheduler. My personal preference is always for Tailwind, but there are other approved. As long as they have API with Pinterest, you are not going to get in trouble. There's lots of gossip that people are saying, well, my numbers aren't good when I pin from X planner. The reality is that Pinterest, they are approved partners. You are not going to get in trouble. Pinterest does not want you to walk away from the app 100%. You need to get into the app natively once a week, 5 minutes here and there.
Gotcha.
It's like a crock pot, right? Like you can set your meal and it will cook while you're working, but you still have to put the ingredients in and take the food out. So Pinterest is the same. Make sure you're not totally ghosting the platform that you're getting in there. and do updated keyword research. Just make sure. I would really look at utilizing seasonal trends. We're seeing a real move that the people who are getting featured by Pinterest, the people who are being accelerated in terms of their growth, are utilizing trends. So I have an example of somebody who's in the food industry, and she had a recipe related to Day of the Dead. And in September, it got picked up by Pinterest and was accelerated because it was in the month of Latin history. So they were wanting to,
super relevant. Yeah,
exactly. So, and they knew, this is coming up. The same thing happened with Black Lives Matter. I had friends who actually, some people who sell handmade products during for Eid. So they got picked up in the weeks leading up to Eid and got featured by the Today tab, which means that Pinterest is basically saying, this is our top trending stuff. Here are people who sell Eid products. Again, it's so think about how your industry or your products, how you could position them and change and and I know your people live and breathe seasons, a lot of the products, whether it's Halloween or Thanksgiving, but look at really how you can better position content leading up at least 3 months before the actual event. So I always recommend,
just like Etsy.
Yep. Because it needs time to index. Pinterest tries it out, and it knows if I put out this holiday pin. So say you sell holiday dresses for small dogs, they will test it out and show it. And if people ignore your pin, they're not going to start showing it to people. But if it actually results in people finding what they want, it will continue to accelerate it because it's been indexed properly. Gotcha. So, those are my biggest recommendations right now. And that's taking in account all the changes we have, all the, rocky times we have experienced in 2020.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, this super valuable stuff. I got a whole page of notes and stuff. My mind's oh.
Yeah, this is my favorite when I do interviews or do a master class and the person interviewing me is hold on, I have to take my own note here.
Yeah, well, the good thing it's recorded, so I always play it back and take notes. But yeah, my audience, this is going to be super helpful for everyone that's listening to this. So you get lots of valuable stuff. So I really appreciate it. But where can people find you and get help and get more resources from you?
I have a few places. My website is always, that's my home, right? So MeaganWilliamson.com. I also spend a lot of time, I have a free Facebook community. You can just search Pinterest marketing and strategy with Meagan, onwards to 6,000 business owners who are in there. Every niche and industry who come, I do regular live trainings. I run a free challenge in that community. And then if you're into Instagram, I do a lot of Instagram stories and things to help people day to day. And that's Meagan A. Williamson.
Awesome. Is your challenge open? Or are you going to do a new one?
So I run them every 4 months. They are a huge, I love running them. Yeah, it's, and I bring my A game, and people always say they can't believe that it's free. The results that we get out of a 5-day challenge is phenomenal. And it's an opportunity for people to really dedicate, okay, I'm going to spend half an hour for 5 days straight with Meagan and get some amazing results. So we do run those once every 4 months. I love them. I love live. I love the chaoticness of my puppy once started biting me while I was teaching.
It's real.
Oh, it was real. And the dog lovers loved it. I had one lady say that she was really mad, and I was like, he's 8 weeks old. He usually slept all day. I don't know why he decided to start attacking me, but he did. And I kept my face so composed. It's a laugh because now he's 80 pounds.
God.
I have an 80-pound shepherd mix, and he's lying beside me now beside my desk. Times have changed significantly, but those challenges are a blast. And I find that people really have a lot of big aha moments when they do it, and it's free.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good that you offer that. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I know
you're welcome.
My listeners are going to get so much out of this. So it was great having you. Great conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. And if anyone has any questions, just, shoot me a DM or a message on Instagram, and I can help them out.
All right. Awesome. All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that interview with Meagan and got a lot out of it as far as best practices, tips, things to try, and just strategies to really step up your Pinterest game, whether you've started a Pinterest business account yet or you're going to start one soon, it's a great way to grow your business and take your Etsy shop or your handmade business to the next level. If you'd like to work with me more and become a Handmade and Beyond community member, I'd love to have you. I have a 30-day free trial. You can hop in there, get immediate access to everything so you can try it all out. I know you'll love it. I know you'll want to stay. Hop in there today, post your questions to the forum, share your shop, get ready for the next monthly live member-only coaching call. Get access to over 30 courses showing you how to start, build, and grow your Etsy shop. And there's always new ones being added each month. My goal is to get you to where you want to be so you can hit your Etsy goals, whether that's making a little bit of extra money each month, maybe making enough money to pay your car payment, or maybe doing Etsy full-time and really being a full-time entrepreneur and getting everything out of your business. Hope to see you in there soon. There is a link below. Until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.